of what happened to Sarah. If people were watching the show this morning, Sarah had to go back to the police station on Friday and was arrested again. Fortunately, she's out and she can talk now. But can we make lots of noise, give lots of love to Sarah, please?
Thinking, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? Yep, I got arrested again, and on Wednesday I'm probably going to get arrested again. So I'll make the speech now, because when they do arrest me again, there may be no trial, because under this REPA disclosure, if you don't give out all of the passwords and PIN numbers to your phones and all the locations of all the Palestinians you know, etc., and give them everything they need to further their investigation, you face 5 years in jail. So you either give out all the information they want, which will lead, it is always a matter of life and death, it will lead to the assassination of journalists and people that we work with on the ground in Gaza. Without a doubt, the British are totally in league. Everything I say will be passed on. Now, they took my DNA for tweets. Why would they take my DNA? And so I asked somebody a little bit more knowledgeable, why did they take my DNA? Oh, they're passing that on to the Israelis. Oh, right, so great. So my DNA now is going to be in the custody of the Israeli regime. So, you know, the trickery of inviting me in, if you like, to sign out of my bail, sitting in the waiting room thinking everything is okay, all of a sudden I'm asked to go to a new waiting room, which happens to be a holding cell. So quickly my ex-husband says, I don't really want to be here, I think we're all going to be arrested. So as soon as I'd gone into the police station voluntarily, that was it. I was in a holding cell, and then I was handcuffed just to walk from this holding cell into the police station, which is literally about 12 yards. And then I was held for about, I think, another 5 or 6 hours. The interrogation was, or are, getting harder and more difficult. Obviously, everything is no comment. But when they ask you very racist questions, you know that this has come directly from the Israelis. These are not British police questions that they're asking you. They can't pronounce the Arabic names. They accused the Arabic language of being unintelligible nonsense. They couldn't translate it. It was an unknown origin, of unknown origin. And at that point, I thought, I'm going to break my no comment here. I'm going to have to give them a history lesson as to the age of Arabic and to where our number. So I said, can you count to number from 1 to 10? And he said, yes. Why are you asking me? I said, if you can count from 1 to 10, you are writing Arabic. Numbers are Arabic. All language comes from Arabic. And he stood up and he shouted, be quiet. So that was the end of that one. But that question, I don't believe a British police officer would ask that question. He was reading a script. So there was another point, I asked the solicitor to get them to stop the tape because I wanted to speak to him, which was a bit of a trick on my part. So we got him to stop the tape, and they had a map of pretty much the whole of the Middle East. And I asked him to point out where Beit Nun was on the map. And he said, well, I don't know where that is. So I said, can you point out where Gaza is on the map? He said, I don't know. He said, I don't know where it is. Why are you asking me this? Put the tape back on. I said, no, keep the tape off. This is not, I want to know where the border of Lebanon is, because you're questioning me about the killing of Lebanese Sheikh al-Nada, who was bombed to death by an Israeli drone in his hometown in Dibon, in Lebanon. They are accusing me of having something to do with this man because he's Palestinian. Well, he's Lebanese, and luckily I have a journalist in Beirut who actually knows the family and can actually produce proof that he's Lebanese. He's not Palestinian, but I'm now accused of associating with this gentleman, even though he's Lebanese, and they're accusing him of being Palestinian. Now that comes from the Israelis again. That is not something the British would do. Everybody they kill is a terrorist. That's what they always say. Everybody they kill is a member of a prescribed organisation. So they've somehow taken this poor Lebanese clergyman and they've turned him into a Palestinian. And they're going to try and do me on that as well. Now I could fight this in court without a problem. Most of us could fight these issues in court. But under the Reaper disclosure, there is no court. There is no trial. It's instant jail. So if it's 5 years instant jail, what happens to Gaza in 5 years? And God only knows. I think 5 years is too long. So that silenced me. That's going to be how they silence me, using this disclosure, PIN numbers or jail. And I actually can't give my PIN numbers out. So I've asked all sorts of questions. What if you don't remember them? What if you never had them? What if you're ill and you can't? There is no excuse for not knowing your PIN numbers, even if you don't know them. So for me, this is going to be a very hard one to fight. I have very good solicitors. We're going to fight as hard as we can, but technically it's instant jail. I may get 2.5 years if I am lucky. If I'm really unlucky, I get the full 14 years, which I believe is the same for some of us in this room. So those are the threats that you're getting while you're being interrogated. And normally I'm okay. This one, I did say to somebody, I normally feel like cast iron, and this turned me into rice paper. For the whole evening I just couldn't speak because, I've just come out of arrest. I've been told I'm going to be arrested again. It's like I may as well just take my sleeping bag into the police station and just make a home out of it. So how I get out of this one, I don't know. Like I say, I do have very good solicitors, but this is Palestine. And the problem is that they're committing a genocide, and we're all trying to stop it. And the more we try and stop it, and the more effective we are at stopping it, the more likely they will come down on you, the more likely they will try and silence you. And they'll try all different ways of silencing you. Maybe they don't want this in court because it talks about Israelis killing civilians. So what they'll do is they'll jail you for another reason, or they'll find something else on you. And they've now gone back to 2018, 2019, historic emails from a very old device that I don't use any longer, and they're using that. They're using this stuff. So now that the investigation is not now just about this genocide, it's about 2021 and the Great March of Return. Well, I can't remember who I was talking to during the Great March of Return, and I know a lot of the people I was are no longer with us. So they have now extended the investigation to go so far back that I don't really have the memory for an awful lot of it. But I did have photographs of people. I did have precious keepsakes. I helped write a book with Rana Schubert, who I believe is no longer with us. She went missing on October the 12th last year. We've not seen or heard of her since. But they took that book. That's the last thing I have of why would you take a book? They took the one gift I'd had off Rafat Al-Arir, who was a professor and a poet. They took the voicemails that I had on a different device. I no longer can hear their voices anymore. I've lost really good friends. I've lost people I worked with for 6, 7, 8 years, and the police took all of that memorabilia. Not because they need it, but just because it's upsetting to lose it. And when you get upset, you're less effective, you don't fight so well, you don't speak so well, you don't feel like even tweeting or posting. And if they keep chipping away like this, then what happens is we go down and down and down and down to the point that we're no longer effective. So the moral of it all is, don't let them push you down. Stick together, stay strong, because we're not facing bombs and bullets. We might be facing very heavy traffic out there, which makes you late, but we're not facing what the Palestinians are facing. They have now, we heard tonight that somebody has an E. coli infection, so you can see how the diseases, another facet of genocide, are spreading. So we don't have this, we're not facing this, we've got roofs over our head. Yes, we're tired, we're exhausted, and we're losing people, but we're safe, we're relatively safe. we live privileged lifestyles. So let's just stick together and keep going, because we're all the Palestinians have got now. And now that disease has really set in, and the weather and the winter, and people are so desperate. We need to, I'm not going to say that they're the voice, we're not the voice of the voices. Palestinians have a very good voice, but that we're the voice of the platformers, because Palestinians never get asked to speak. So stay strong, stay connected. We're going to fight the police, and yeah, if I get arrested, I'll be okay. I'm still safe, and I'll carry on the fight some other way. So thank you for listening to me today.
Get in there.
There is another person in the room who's been arrested, I think quite a few times, but has been arrested last week and has a case coming up, I think before Christmas. Tony Greenstein's here. Can we make a round of applause for Tony? Tony's been called a terrorist, so we've all got to be careful about this.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Crispin. I have a bomb in each pocket. So you better watch out. And I don't want to accuse you of anti-Semitism, Crispin, but there was no kosher option tonight. That's sadly lacking. Stephen over there will testify. Well, thank you very much. I'm not really going to talk about myself too much, because I think you probably hear too much about me anyway. No. I have been arrested twice in the last year. The last time was on October the 4th, when I spoke at the demonstration outside the picket of Zippy Hotovely, the Israeli ambassador in London. And the police objected to my comparisons between Israel and the Nazis. I know, it's strange, isn't it? And yet, the comparisons are there before our eyes. I mean, they started off on 9th of October, Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, saying we will deprive them of food, of water, of fuel, because they are human animals. And yet Heinrich Himmler, who was second only to Hitler, the chief of the SS, in a famous speech of October the 4th, 1943, described the Jews in exactly the same terms. And if we listen to what Israelis say, like a podcast, the most popular in Israel, Two Nice Jewish Boys, they were talking about how nice it would be if they could just press a button and erase them all. And they see no connection at all between extermination as talk today and extermination yesterday. But the reality is that Zionism was formed almost as a mirror reflection of the Nazis and the anti-Semites. So it isn't surprising what is happening. But it's also not surprising that we're getting raids up and down the country, people arrested on the most trivial of pretext under the anti-terrorist laws. And of course it's not political, we will be told, even though there are some laws which they're not so enthusiastic about implementing, like the fox hunting law, for example. Or there's the International Criminal Court law, which outlaws complicity in war crimes and genocide. These laws are less important to them than finding an excuse and a pretext for convicting someone because they're alleged to have supported Hamas. So I think we know what it's about, but we also do face an international situation where US imperialism, with Britain in its pocket, as it were, is going to war on any pretext against any adversary that they think of, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's Iran, you name it. I mean, the US is already sanctioning about 30 countries. So we live in incredibly difficult times and repressive times. The golden age of capitalism, which was when the Soviet Union was around, has disappeared. The United States and Western imperialism are looking for an excuse to go to war, because in a sense that is what capitalism does. War is just an extension of economics, and we have to understand this. So all I'm going to say is it's incumbent upon us, and it's incumbent on the left, to mount an alternative. We've seen what Starmer is like. We knew what he'd be like before he got into government, and he's lived up to his promise. In other words, he's as abysmal as one can imagine. And of course, he's got that. I don't want to be rude, but a foreign secretary who can say that not enough people have been killed for it to be a genocide is really a prize idiot, as well as being ashamed. But I mean, it doesn't take much to look at the Genocide Convention to know that genocide is about the destruction of a people. And in Gaza, they've destroyed every single hospital virtually, they've bombed every school, they've murdered children, sniped them in the head quite deliberately, tortured and killed and murdered doctors. There is nothing they have done. They've even bombed the world's third oldest church, St. Porphyrius in Gaza City. And even the Vatican and the Pope was forced to complain because snipers were taking down worshippers in the Roman Catholic Church. I assume Hamas doesn't have a base in the Roman Catholic Church. You don't know. I mean, they destroyed a reservoir in Rafah. Quite possibly Hamas was in the middle of the reservoir, for all we know. But I think we know what the excuse is. They're out to destroy a people and a civilization, and that is the classic definition of a genocide. So it is really up to us to rebuild the left in this country, yeah, and that is a serious task. So thank you very much for listening, and let's get on with the evening.
Thank you, Tony. I just want to say that the calendars that were produced were voted for with Heroes of the Year. We've had Heroes of the Year before that weren't included this year. One of whom is Asa Winstanley, who was raided by the police, whose house was raided by the police not long ago. Would you be able to speak, Asa? Can we have a round of applause for Asa Winstanley? You weren't ready for that, were you?
Yeah, fine. I haven't prepared any remarks, so you're going to get my reused remarks from Cardiff, which includes some Welsh. So, if you hear Welsh, that's why. Prynhawn da, good afternoon, everybody. Well, it's good evening now, so it's not sweat da. I'm Asa Winstanley. Okay, I'll skip that bit. You know who I am. Yeah. Good to be back again in my homeland, South Wales. Okay, for the last 14 months, we've seen an unprecedented popular movement in the West. Ordinary people have been coming out in their masses to reject the support our governments are giving to Israel to carry out its horrendous genocide against the people of Palestine. People like you have marched in the streets week after the week. You've disrupted politicians, business as usual. Some groups have even taken direct action against Israeli arms factories and those like our heroic friends in Palestine Action. For 4 years, Palestine Action have run a sustained campaign of direct action against Elbit in the UK, Israel's largest private weapons manufacturer. The backlash from the powers that be to our movement has also been furious, and over the last year we've seen activists and journalists who focus on Palestine be persecuted by Britain's counter-terrorist police. I myself was the target of a dawn raid on my home by the counter-terror police last month. They arrived while it was still dark, rudely interrupting our sleep and ringing down our doorbell demanding entry. They confiscated my computers, my phone, all my devices I need for my journalism. They knew what they were doing was persecution of a journalist, and even stated in writing that, quote, "We are aware of your profession." However, I wasn't charged with any crime, and to date that is still the case. Thankfully, I'm in a strong position to resist their attempts to go on a fishing expedition and, through my phones and devices, potentially endangering my sources. Protecting my sources is extremely important to me as a journalist, and it is in fact a legal obligation of British law. I very much respect British law. Although my case and those of other similar journalists have been totally ignored by the mainstream British media, I've nonetheless received some amazing support from people like yourselves. And even the National Union of Journalists is supporting me, and I've got a great legal team. So I think to push back and to defeat this such flagrant abuse of police powers, because that's what it is, I think it's important that we campaign to support Palestine Action. What they're doing to Palestine Action is imprisoning political prisoners in 21st century Britain. According to the latest information, Palestine Action has 22 political prisoners sitting on remand. 22 political prisoners, I believe most of whom are on remand, or possibly all of them. And most of them are awaiting their day in court, and many are even in solitary confinement. And of course, many of these arrests are made on a counter-terror pretext, and then they're later charged with non-terror related alleged offences. Until last year, British authorities and the pro-Israel lobby had really failed in their lawfare campaign against Palestine Action, and that's for one simple reason. Time and time again, juries and judges found repeatedly that what Palestine Action is doing is not against the law. Taking direct action against Israeli arms factories is lawful action to prevent war crimes in Palestine. And this has been what Palestine Action's lawyers repeatedly argued in court, and they did so extremely successfully. Before last year, with the increasing crackdown, this is a part of my speech in Cardiff when I was heckled. Well, actually, it wasn't particularly targeted at me, it was just some crazy person attacking the protest. Anyway, it was fine.
Tell us what to say on his behalf.
It was a she, actually, yeah. No, I won't tell you, it wasn't very much. No, it was fine. So before last year, Palestine Action cases that finally reached court were repeatedly acquitted, and juries found that the damage they caused was proportional and legal action to prevent massacres in Palestine. Now that was always true, but this fact has been thrown into stark relief by what happened recently when the International Criminal Court finally, after a 6-month delay, issued arrest warrants for the Prime Minister and former Defence Minister of Israel. And exactly because they have failed to make anything stick on Palestine Action, the police and the government are now going to desperate lengths. They are abusing counter-terror law to persecute lawful activists and journalists. Palestine Action does damage arms factory. Of course that's true, that's the whole point of what they're doing. But it's not criminal damage, and that's the critical legal distinction. And the simple truth is this: the Israeli government are the criminals. They're war criminals. They're genocidal. Israel is a genocidal state, and what's happening in Gaza now is the Holocaust of our times, as the Palestinian author Susan Abu-Hara put it. I've been saying that to people, and I realised I'm just actually quoting Susan Abu-Hara. I stole that from her. But I think it's absolutely true. It's a very strong statement to make, but I think it's accurate. I've got a final message today for Keir Starmer, David Lammy, Yvette Cooper, as well as the Attorney General, Richard Herman, and his deputy, Sarah Sackman, until recently, of the Jewish labour movement. By the way, that means the Jewish labour movement has now infiltrated one of the highest and most important parts of our government. Think about the implications of that. What massive conflict of interest. My message to them today to these British government lackeys of the Zionists is, we demand that you immediately cease and desist in your involvement with the Israeli genocide in the Gaza Strip. We demand that. That's our demand. As I explained to the police when they invaded my home, in years to come, you and your children will look back on your actions with regret. You will lament your role. Some of you will lie and you will claim, as a lot of white people did in South Africa, we were against it all along. We were against the Holocaust all along. You will go on and you will lie. More than that, Starmer, Cooper, Lammy, the rest of you, now the International Criminal Court has got an arrest warrant out for the Israeli genocidaires, you are directly aiding and abetting war criminals who have used starvation as a weapon of war to live. And you too will be prosecuted one day. And we will do everything we can to make sure that day arrives sooner rather than later. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. All of you are on the right and correct side of an epic historical struggle for justice, freedom and liberation. Thank you very much. Leah Kahn.
Round of applause for Asa Winstanley. There are other heroes in the room. Yale, would you like to speak? Leah Kahn, who was in the calendar last year, who was arrested. I can't remember which protest it was. I think I've got so many protests that I remember that it's hard to remember. But would you like?
I didn't even get to the protest, so I was
You didn't even get there.
No.
All right. Do you want to speak? I mean, you're already up here, so you have to now.
Lovely seeing all of you. Thank you all for coming here. I really didn't prepare any talk. I didn't expect. I thought it was the hero of this year I'm going to speak. Well, I'll start with this one. As you know, throughout the year I've been creating different posters and walking around with them. This is similar to the poster for which I was arrested a year and a month ago, except I had to add because Israel terrorism expanded to Lebanon, West Bank, and in fact to the whole Middle East. So that's the main amendment that I did for this poster, but it is still Nazi Israel. And I'm sorry, anybody who claim we cannot compare Israel to the Nazis, there is not a minute that for me personally, Israel are the Nazis. Because I grew up all on the stories of my family, of their growing up in Nazi Germany. So for me, that's the term of reference, is the Holocaust. And what Israel is doing is worse than anything I heard for my family about what's done in the Holocaust. The sadism, the way of the invented how to torture Palestinians, how to exterminate, to evaporate children, that you only have the hair, the face is gone, how you can't bury people because nothing is left from their bodies. This is worse than the Holocaust, and we have to speak out about what it is. What Israel is, and it always been. Israel was always about terrorism. Israel was always about the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians to destruction, to exterminate them. And the words and the language that you hear Israelis speaking now openly was always the language that they were speaking. Was always, but Israelis knew for many decades they have to hide it. They couldn't openly and explicitly say it. But now they say it clear and loud, that they want all Palestinians dead. And there is so little, unfortunately, hardly no Israelis are really speaking out against this Holocaust, because they managed to brainwash entire population, and that population is a danger to the world, not just to Palestinians, because they're so full of hate, they're so full of lacking any humanity in them, no shred of humanity. And so it's a hard work that we're going to face, trying to save the Palestinians, those who are still surviving, and the whole Middle East, because Israel wants more. It's now attacking Syria. We know what they've done to Lebanon, and they haven't finished Lebanon either. Actually, already in May 1948, Ben Gurion said they wanted to also control Lebanon. And so it is a task. I know they are going, I wait like my parents in Nazi Germany. You wait for the door, knock on the door. I actually don't expect them to knock on the door, I expect them to bash the door. It's becoming so violent oppression now of activists, as you just heard from Sarah and other people who didn't actually give details about what happened to them. But we are living in increasing terrorism on behalf of the terrorist state. And yesterday morning, I did this poster because I was actually quite naive, despite being 52 years activist. I was quite shocked to read a Starmer tweet and basically saying that the UK is going down to the pocket of BlackRock, and just please search what this company is doing. It's not just doing arms, it is their livelihood is war. Their livelihood is destruction of people, of looting every asset, especially farmland. And they're going, we have a big time job to fight all of them. Thank you very much. Long live Palestine! Free Palestine!
And 3,000 organisations pushing a racist ideology which has direct impacts in both Palestine and indeed on the streets in this country, especially against Muslims, people of colour. We cannot continue with this being the case. It's obviously the case that the Zionist movement itself needs to be directly targeted, and that's how we need to escalate. We need to do it by looking in particular at who are funding these organisations. Let me just close with two examples that perhaps not well known in this country. So there are Zionist family foundations, which are foundations set up by Zionists which fund the IDF or the illegal settlements. So, for example, there's a family called the Lewis family. They have various foundations, and they directly fund the IDF, directly fund the settlements, and indeed directly fund Islamophobia in this country. They also directly own River Island. River Island has a shop in every high street in this country. They shouldn't be allowed to continue to operate. Every single one should be picketed. River Island. There's another family called the Wilkinson family. They have a number of different charities. They fund the IDF, they fund illegal settlements, and indeed they also fund Islamophobia in this country. They own a shop called Next. They have a branch in every single city up and down this country. Next, yes. These all branches of Next should be picketed and should be shut down. We cannot tolerate the direct funding of genocide through the high streets in every city in this country. That's why I wanted to raise the question. We need to directly target the Zionist movement in this country and stop them functioning. Every single one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. David Miller, a round of applause for David Miller. Now there's another issue that we've been picking up on the show recently, which is this doxing issue. I mean, have you all heard of doxing? I didn't really know about it until a few weeks ago.
Please explain.
Yeah, doxing is where people use your personal information and give that information out publicly, sometimes to your employer, to say this person, for example, has been on a demonstration, has been this person's been tweeting this kind of thing. That, do you really want them to be in your company? Do you want them to be in your workforce? That this has been going on quite a lot, but people are not speaking about it because they're intimidated about that. But also the media is not covering it. But in the last week, since I did an interview of 2 people who've been doxxed, I've had quite a few messages from people talking about it. They don't want to have their names revealed, but there are people who are coming forward, and the person who I noted first on this was Ranjeet Brar, who's here tonight. Would you be able to speak a bit about the case of doxing and how it's affected you? Do we have a round of applause for Ranjeet?
So much, Crispin. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you all. It's a bit of an anticlimax after David and Yale and Tony. But I'll try and say something that's interesting. So this doxing question, maybe I'll start with that. Perhaps can reflect on what Asa was saying, and what Sarah was saying, and what Yale was saying about the increasing repression that we're seeing in our country. I think that's a fair statement to make, don't you? Yeah. And that if we reflect on something that is as old as the perhaps 1936 speech made in the United Nations, that freedom is indivisible, and human rights likewise are indivisible. And if we allow the Palestinians or any people to be crushed, to be subject to genocide, to be wiped off the face of the earth, are we so arrogant as to imagine that those who commit those crimes against the Palestinians will not feel free to roll out similar crimes against them? I've been a long-term campaigner against apartheid. My father was Indian, Harpal Brar. He came to this country in 1962. He came from a wealthy, landed family, but found racism here, found colonialism, and changed his life. Gave up all of that and became what some of you would consider to be a mad, ranting, raving, Maoist, communist. He became an advocate for his community, and he became a revolutionary, actually. And as an activist in the Indian Workers Association, he not only campaigned against racism in our country, which was rife, it was rife even when I grew up. When I grew up in Hemel Hempstead in the 1970s, I didn't know any other culture. I was a British boy. But it was all right to be taken out and beaten for being a Paki and for being a nigger, right? That was the reality of the society I grew up in. That's very different to how it is now. And I know I look English. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm from here. Where are you from? I'm from here. The name was enough. But that racism doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a colonial history and a colonial past. And it's that colonial history and colonial past that needs an ideology to go with it, to justify it. That ideology is racism. And you can look at the speeches of people who come out of the American army when they fought, in Iraq. They're very powerful speeches. You say, a weapon doesn't fire itself. Doesn't matter how much sophistication and technology you have, you can't get the army of the US to fire it against the people of Iraq without one secret ingredient, and that was the racism that they taught us towards those people. And it's the wealth, it's the incredible wealth of the Middle East, which is the ongoing justification for these crimes. A lot of people are asking, why are these Zionists allowed to carry on? Why is Keir Starmer a Zionist? Why is Joe Biden a Zionist? I wish we could give Joe Biden a history lesson. Maybe he can't take it on right now. But he's got that very famous quote where he says, you know what, I love Israel, I'm a Zionist. If Israel didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. Well, newsflash, we did invent it. It didn't exist. And it was the British who did it. They did it precisely to steal the wealth of the Middle East. And yes, absolutely what Yale said is right. Yale is inspirational to see you and your stand, unassailable stand, as someone brought up in Israel who is unafraid to criticize the crimes and call them what they are. We must never allow ourselves to be browbeaten and intimidated. Criticizing crimes, criticizing genocide, criticizing collective punishment, criticizing starvation, criticizing massacre of children, criticizing using weapons of mass destruction against a civilian population, the densest civilian population on earth, which is there precisely because of past crimes and past genocides and past ethnic cleansing. We can never be intimidated into stopping our criticism and calling it out for what it is. It is fascism. It is fascism. Israel is a fascist terrorist. I got in trouble for selling this book, and some of you may consider this to be provocative, and I guess there's an extent to which the image is supposed to be provocative. Because if we're not provoked by the crime of genocide, then what the bloody hell are we supposed to be provoked by? It is just what it looks like. Actually, it turns out to be a symbol from the Raelians, who are a strange religious cult. But it's meant to be a comparison, both between the crimes and the actions and the deeds of the fascist ideology of the Nazi Germans, and the crimes and the genocide and the foul deeds, including annexation of foreign lands, expansionism, ethnic cleansing, Lebensraum, apartheid. All of these are terms which apply equally to the fascist state, the colonial entity, the Zionist colonial settler state that is Israel. And for that reason, it's a just comparison. Not only that, historically, the two collaborated in the formation of Israel because they shared certain common goals. The Nazis, of course, thought the Germans were a master race, and they wanted to get rid of Jews. But the Jews, the German Zionist organization, also wanted to display, they thought they could never integrate into society. That was their ideology. They had an ultranationalism and Jewish supremacism, and they wanted Jews to leave Germany and go to Palestine. They cooperated in a historic agreement called the Havara. They minted a coin. We know that Eichmann went to Jerusalem. These are historic facts. I'm not making them up. I'm not anti-Semitic. I believe in the equality of all people. Precisely because the stock in trade of Israel has been to conflate criticism of Israel with criticism of Judaism. They're trying to make it illegal, beyond the pale. The IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is precisely designed to indemnify Israel of criticism of its crimes. But that now has been rolled out with the attack on Corbyn, which was so vehement in defeating the movement that many of you were involved in. I wasn't. I've never been a supporter of Labour Party, and the reasons I won't go into here. But you guys have. And you guys very much believe, many of you, that you could bring Corbyn. You could bring Corbyn in and you could harness the British state and change the world. And I know that you sincerely want that to be the case. I wish that were the case. I think what we can learn from the Corbyn movement is that's not the case. That actually the collaboration of the British establishment predates even the Labour Party, all right? The British establishment formed Israel. It's wedded to Israel precisely because its ongoing profit is still dependent. I'm going to end with this one quote. This one quote is from someone, is a British trade unionist called Trevor Dunning, I believe, T.J. Dunning. And it was quoted by Marx. And it just have a little think about this. Capital is said by a quarterly review to fly, turbulence, and strife. Capital, money. The capitalists, bankers. And to be timid, which is very true. But this is very incompletely stating the question. Capital eschews no profit, or very small profit, just as nature was formerly said to abhor a vacuum. But with adequate profit, capital is bold. A certain 10% will ensure its employment anywhere. 20% certain will produce eagerness. 50% positive audacity. 100% will make it ready to trample on all human laws. 300%, and there's not a crime at which it will scruple, nor a risk it will not run, even to the chance of its owner being hanged. If turbulence and strife will bring profit, it will freely encourage growth. Smuggling and the slave trade have amply proved all that is here stated. I would put it to you that when we look at the genocidal crimes of Israel, when we say why does the British capitalists, why do the American capitalists, why do our politicians, Labour, Tory, Liberal, Why do they all stand with the genocide? We have to look a little bit deeper. It's the people who control the oil fields, the armaments manufacturers, massive capitalist corporations and banks. These are the people who operate our politicians. You know, yes, Zionists are there. They are absolutely a part of that machine. But Israel is a colony of the US and Britain. It's from here that the genocide really originates. We must never lose sight of that. And for that reason, our ruling class are the perpetrators of the genocide. They are the ones who come to your house, Sarah, come to your house, Asa, come to my house, arrest me at demonstrations, and now are coming for my registration at the GMC. They wish to prevent me from practicing medicine after 25 years of training and an unblemished record. They wish to stop me from practicing medicine, and they're pursuing a case against me to strike me off because there's no criminal case to answer. But you know, actually, the registration law, the so-called regulatory law around the professions, around your work, is a very potent crime, which doesn't really need the same level of scrutiny and tests. So you've broken no law, but you can have no economic existence. This is the reality. We're told that the infringement of human rights is visited upon Nigel Farage when he struck off from a bank at Coots. The reality is it's you that is being targeted by the diminution of human rights in this country. So I don't want you to applaud me, I want you to applaud each and every one of you for standing with Palestine. You're quite right, the Palestinians are the ones who are really at the sharp end of struggle through no fault of their own. They found themselves at the cutting edge of the struggle against imperialism. But I salute every one of you who didn't need to put yourself in harm's way, but have stood up for what is right, and I salute you all. Please give yourself a very big
round of applause for Ranjeet Brar. Right now, it's 10 to